So it is indeed a fact of life. I think it's Mercy. You have to mute yourself.
Yeah, somebody's Facebook is on.
There we go. Yeah, okay. I think it was your Facebook or something. So many parents dread discussing intimacy and sexuality with their children. Parents may be embarrassed, they may be worried, they may not understand this topic. In some households or families, cultures and religious norms may make it inappropriate for adults and adolescents to talk about sex. However, these are conversations that are worth having. Yet the question is there a right time? Is there a right age to talk about sex with our children? And what indeed is the icebreaker? Before I hand over to the panel, I did say that, yeah, I introduced sex talk to my son who's 13. I did so a couple of years ago because there was some talk in his school in his class about adolescence and, maturity. So they asked the parents to give their consent if they want the kid to take the class. I said, yeah, I will, because if you don't give your consent, they don't hear it from the classroom, they hear it from somewhere else. And at the end of the class, the teacher sent the material to us and we reviewed and we talked about it. And the second icebreaker was when he had a crush on a girl. And I'm like, oh, okay, something is happening here. Hormones are kicking in. So we talked about what dating is and what it should not be. And my emphasis has always been, how old are you again? You have time. It's okay to have those feelings. I know where your direction is heading, but I don't think you're ready. But it's okay to like somebody. It means you're growing normally. I really like that, the gender exchange talks with the girls. But I'd like to dig deep into, do we let them date at that age? If your son comes to you at 13 and says, I have a crush on a girl, what do you do? Anyway, this is going to be a very interesting, long, and heartfelt conversation. I want to start with Bob, who gave birth to this topic today. Bob.
Yes.
Growing up with your parents, did they ever talk to you about sex?
No.
Oh, yes. I expected that answer.
They never did.
That's good enough for now. All right, let's go to Dr. Ruth. Dr. Ruth, did your parents talk to you about sex?
Not directly. My mom always gave kind of like insights. She would just give precautionary advice like, oh, be careful, if you sleep with a boy, you're gonna, be pregnant, but not like directly, not like the way I did with my own kids.
Awesome. What about you,
Yeah.
Dr. Mercy? Did your parents ever talk to you about sex? You are muted.
When you start growing, you start getting to puberty, your little titties, breasts start coming out, you start menstruating, and they look at you and be like, okay, that time don't reach. If some person touch you, go carry belly.
They did say that to you. Some person touch you, you carry belly.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And it's not like I did not know what they meant or what touch meant.
Okay. That's as far as it went. All right. What about you, Dorothy?
So I mean, my mom is of late, and I have my mom to thank for the overt approach that I have to sex. My mom was very expressive about sexual education, specifically to me and my sister. So we had, I can recall very well, we were in primary school, and I was in primary school, I think I was 9 or 10, and that was during the period that we're trying to introduce, I'm talking about the late 80s, right? So 89, and that was the period during which they were trying to introduce sexual education in school, domestic science, where they'll talk about, because there were already like older girls in our classes, so, and I recall back then there was a teacher who came in, a female teacher, and she asked, who knows about vagina?
Okay.
Who can tell me what the vagina is? and I put up my hand. I was practically one of the youngest in class, and I explained what the vagina was. And she was shocked, and she's like, how do you know all of this thing? Which was very, very confrontational. Like, how do you know all of these things? And I said, my mom taught me. Like, oh, okay. So my mom was very expressful about you knowing your body parts. And for her, it was a way to prevent you from being abused.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the 80s, the late 80s, early 90s. So that's how progressive my mom was in sexual health education, So and that is a path that I have pursued throughout my life and with my children. I mean, maybe you're my friend, you know how open I am about sex, and so that's just how it was for me.
Wow. If you have your phone on Facebook, if you put it on mute, that will help kill the sound. I mean, all of us. For me, my parents never did either. But I remember my father had a book on reproduction, and he would call me every so often to just give me a page of the book to read. He'd be like, read this part. I'd be like, okay. And he had very, explicit sexual terms. And when I read them, he would say, okay, you're done. Nothing after that. That was how he introduced me to the conversation about sex, but my mother never ever did. So I can clearly see that we are all here on the same level, except Dorothy, that our parents did not introduce sex talk to us. So then going back to Bob, how did you first learn about sex education?
Well, to begin with, I'm very honored to be on the panel with everyone. And to answer your question, it was a very explorative experience for me. And it began with the fact that growing up, I started transitioning into adolescence. And therefore, I started having, the experiences that are consistent with the development of male hormones and all of that. And one morning I went to bed, or one morning I woke up from sleep, and I realized that I had a wet dream.
Okay.
And when I got up, I was taken aback because I was embarrassed that I thought I had gone on myself. I peed on myself, but then it wasn't enough that the bed was wet. Like the entire bed was wet.
Oh, wow.
And so, that was the beginning of my journey. So I started wondering what had happened. And then as a kid, it didn't even occur to me immediately, like, what was the night like? Did you have a dream or anything like that? So it's like 2 days later, I was like traumatized by that whole experience. Like at this age, am I really wetting the bed and stuff like that? Then it happened again, and then I started thinking, what happened? Then I remembered that I had a dream and things like that. And then eventually, I started having pubic hairs, and I was thinking, the hair is supposed to grow on your hair. It's like, what else is going on here? So that experience, just discovering myself, was an adventure to me. And it wasn't something that anybody was able to like orientate me. Because I remember like somebody said, like once, I think it was one of the doctors said when she started developing her breast and stuff, the parents were like, okay, it's about that time we need to have that conversation. Unlike her and her parents, my parents were not keen to such difference that they could have said, hey, maybe it's about time we tell you a thing or two about you, yourself, and other encounters and things that you may become exposed to. So from that point on, the next time that I would have there's things that happen in between, but the next time that I would have another detailed exposure that was like a rude awakening again to my previous experience was when I offered a biology class at Form 3.
And that 3.
at Form 3. So that was around the time when my teacher was teach us about reproduction.
Reproduction.
Yes. And that was something that was quite immersive for the entire class,
For lack of
because
a better word.
right, because mind you that prior to that, as people transitioning into students, we had back in the days, everybody has shared this experience one way or the other, where we do, well, people call it hide and seek, mommy play, but plenty and all of that,
Which they call
So
crush today, yeah? You have a crush?
exactly.
Mhm.
So exactly what is currently described as crush. So you have this little expression where, okay, you're like, you have an attraction to somebody. This is the preferred person that you want to play roles with. I'm gonna be the dad, you're gonna be the mom. And then sometimes we also try to like replicate what we see in the movies. At the
Yes.
time, Nigerian movies were very popular. So you would see the role of a mother and a father, and then you would see children. And we want to emulate that, because then maybe you might see like the mom might cook the food and bring to the dad, and then they're like, oh, Omali Chan, all that, And then you feel like, oh, this must be a good feeling to want to be a father, to want to be a mother. So you all play roles with this person, because then you're already attracted to that person. And then so coming into this biology class, we already had one or two knowledge ideas, about what this thing might be. And then you would see another role where you see, a young man in quarter was trying to like court another lady, and then they're trying to kiss, dating, and all of that. So all of that just hypes up your knowledge and desire to want to know more about what else can be going on that we're not being shown on the camera.
That's right.
It's like,
That's right.
so John and Mary just met, they hugged, they kissed, they were holding hands. And then the next day, Mary's mom was mad that Mary was talking to John. And then 3 months later, they're going to John's family that Mary is pregnant. Well, what happened here?
Yes.
What happened here?
Yeah, what happened in between? But going back
You
to your
needed to
wet
fill the
dream.
gaps.
Go ahead. What do you say, Dora?
I said you needed to fill the gaps, and in this filling the gaps with your own imagination.
With your own imagination. That's what I'm
Exactly.
going back to. So before you even get to that point where they're angry at Mary for getting pregnant because John did something, did you tell anyone about your dreams, about what was happening to you, or did you just keep it to yourself and try, like Dora said, trying to fill in the gaps by yourself? Did you bring it up with anybody?
Well, at the time, I have to say, to answer the question, no, I didn't. Initially, I didn't. And that was because of the lack of support from immediate siblings or immediate family members, because it wasn't like the nature of African families, most African families is more like, if you have an elder sister, you're going to be directed to do your chores. It's like, do your morning chores, get ready for school, and things like that. But you don't have that type of a relationship. Most African families don't have the type of bonding and relationship that warrants the elder brother to talk to the junior brother in such a manner that the junior brother might become very comfortable enough to say, I had a weird experience. What does that mean?
Yeah. And that's what we all faced. It became like something for yourself. I tell you, when my younger sister started having her period, my mom told her to go talk to me. And she came to me and I said, what did she say to tell me? She said she'd come and show what's happening to me. I said, did she tell me what happened to me? So she expected me to help you, but she did not help me. The lack of that support, So what if I had learned some things the wrong way and I'm not telling my younger sister about what I learned, which wasn't right? So we really need to have parents to be involved in such conversations. Now, Dorothy, back to you. Your mother was very, you said, expressful about this. So when you went to school, you were really open about it. Were you considered a bad child? Because again, growing up, if you knew a lot about this, you are the bad child.
Yes, I was a bad child, but the truth is, I think my sister and I would already had we already had a solid reputation of being intelligent, clean, very mothered children. So this was really a contradictory image, to say I was a bad child, because I couldn't be a bad child, because everyone knew we got picked up from school, we're driven home, and these are not kids. I grew up in Mutengene, by the way.
Yes.
I'm a real Cham girl. So but it's not like we walked the streets. My mom. We had a very sheltered childhood. But I really want to speak to Bob's experience, because that's exactly the reason why we're here. Now, if I go back to Bob's experience, right, I can imagine how traumatizing it is for most boys, because for girls, at least your puberty shows. I mean, in terms of
breast
it's
and
obvious.
period.
You have the budding breast, and then you have the period, and so it forces attention to you. For boys, it's not that apparent.
That's right.
It's not something where it's like it's there for everyone to see. And so for most boys, it becomes even more traumatizing. I think it's traumatizing for girls who do not know what bleeding is, to just find blood dripping off, from their vagina, and it's like,
and they don't even know the name vagina to start with. You don't know that name vagina.
They don't know the name vagina. They
something
don't know the name vagina. So, and this is actually why such shows are really, really important. So Mabel, thank you, and Bob, thank you for using your experience to spark such a topic. It is important for us. When you're talking to a child, right? You go down on your knees, then you bend down to the child to be on eye level with that child. It is important for us. I mean, most of us who are parents, it's important for us to go down on our knees and meet our children at eye level, at the level of experience where they find themselves. What I mean by that is, we're talking about the talk. It shouldn't stay at the talk. It should be talks. Yeah?
It should be continuous.
It should be continuous. And maybe I'm sorry for hijacking your show, and then I just throw it, because
who said you're hijacking? Dorothy, you're so knowledgeable. I cannot wait to ask you how you introduce such talk to your 10-year-old.
And that's exactly what I'm going to say.
Yes.
So for Bob, why it was so traumatic was there was zero knowledge. Zero knowledge. Now, if you read, most parents, we have mobile phones, we have a wealth of knowledge in our hands, within our reach, but we don't use it. But if you read, if you just Google, when is the best time to start talking about sex, sexual health education? And I really want to underscore sexual health education, right? Because we Africans, we tend to bedevil the word sex. Oh,
we
sex,
do.
You have to be ashamed. You have to hide your face before you say shame. You say sex. So let's take it to a level which is, comfortable. Sexual health education, because it has sexual, it has health to it, and it has education to it. Now, you start at a level where you start getting kids, babies, to be conscious about their body parts. That is where this whole conversation starts. We need to start parents to be cognizant of the fact that, you have to say a vagina is a vagina, a penis is a penis.
It's not a pee-pee.
It's not a pee-pee, man. It's not a pee-pee. When we try to throw a softened blow on these things, we tabula, I don't know how to say it, we put a taboo on it. We put a taboo on it. It's a penis, it's a body part. It's
just like your hand, your eye, your ear.
It's your breath. And you want this kid, if this kid is not familiar with their body parts, someone is going to help them become more familiar to their body parts.
There you go.
And that is what we want to avoid. So it starts at the prime age of 3, where a child can express themselves, where they can say, I want to pee. You want your child to be able to tell you, Mama, my vagina hurts. Mama, my penis hurts because it's a body part. And then when you get to about 7, these children, that's why at about 7, about 6, 7, children start going behind the classroom doors and show me yours and I'll show you mine. They start getting inquisitive and curious about 7. At about 7. And so you start teaching these kids consent. What I have done with my kids is by the age of 6, I have taught them the red, yellow, and green body parts. The red body parts are I use this because it's simple for them. Every kid at that age at 7 knows what red is, what green is. Green is go, red is danger, yellow is stay still, stand still, or whatever. You know, so the red body parts are parts where everyone has to ask you for your consent before touching you there. Those are reds. Your penis, your vagina, and in most cases, your mouth. Because that's where oral sex for most boys and even for girls, that's where oral sex is manifested. So red is a mouth. Before I put my finger into your mouth, I have to ask for your permission as a child and ask you, hey, is it okay for me? A doctor would do that. If you go to any pediatrician, they would ask you, I'm going to check your mouth. Is it okay for you to open your mouth wide for me? That is consent. The yellow body parts are body parts that can be sexualized. The anus can be sexualized. So you need to teach the kids, even though the anus is not as red as the vagina or the penis, it is a yellow body part because it can be sexualized. You know, and in some cases you can even say it's red. You know, the hand can be yellow because someone can use children's hands, touch me here.
And they do that on children. We see them on social media very often.
And they do that on children.
Yeah.
And the green parts are parts, if someone touches you on your head, it's okay. But also,
your
if someone
shoulder,
touches you on
okay.
your back and your shoulder, it's okay. You know, so you teach them that way. And while you're teaching them consent, because they do the peep shows behind the doors, you know, you're also teaching them that you do not touch some other person's red part or yellow parts without consent.
Right. It's a two-way street.
It's a two-way street, right? So that's a conversation we want to have with our kids at that age. Now, we used to say having sex talk with kids should begin at about 13. I'm sorry to say no. You have to start way earlier. The proliferation of social media, we have our kids exposed to so much knowledge that you would be frightened at the data if you look at how many kids masturbate between the age of 10 and 14. If you just Google it, if you look at masturbation rates between they call them the tweens and the teens. So the two ages, so 10, 11, 12, and then the teens, it is heavy. So why I decide to have a sex talk with my son is because 1, between 7 and 9, they start having puberty. And puberty comes with changes. You know, you get into a 9-year-old's class, what hits you is the stench because they start sweating it out, you know? And I try to explain to him what is happening with your body. So what is happening with your body? And so you're slowly introducing the sex talk to the kid. And please, every parent knows their kid. Meet your kid at their level of comfort. I know that my 10-year-old, I can talk sex with him, but it might not be the same with Mercy's 10-year-old or Ruth's 10-year-old or Mabel, your 10-year-old. So why I'm saying this is just as we kneel down to meet our kids at eye level is the same philosophy that we go through when talking to our kids about sex. Meet them at the level of their comfort. You know your kid. Meet them at the level of their experience. Meet them at the level of their exposure.
Mm.
You know, so I mean, long story short, I started talking to my kids about creating the comfort of talking to my kids about sex at the age of 3.
Mm.
You know,
that is wonderful. That reminds me when my son was, I think, about the same age, 3 or 4, and he said something about his penis. And one of my friends was at home. She's like, JJ said, I'm like, yeah, that's the word I taught him. That's his body part. So I think one thing I did good was make them know that those are the names of the body part. But to go as deep as you have, no, not with my 8-year-old yet. So I need to learn from you. And I like the colors, the red, the green, and the yellow. They're very good to use to teach them. And one thing you mentioned, consent, right? When a doctor wants to talk to a child and says, hey, I'm going to touch your ear, is that okay? I'm going to put my hand in your mouth, is that okay? Consent is something that we've learned in the Western world. Because in our African cultures, you go to the doctor, move your clothes, madam, stand for day. It's like they don't really expect you to even be ready for them to touch you or for you to give consent. So that is something that when I look back at my African upbringing, I'm like, we need to learn a lot about consent, even when it comes to adults. We don't we don't ask, and we don't give consent. They just touch us the way they want to. Let me go to Dr. Ruth. You have 3 girls. I call them your sisters because they're so grown. They're teenagers. How did you introduce the topic of sex to your girls?
Yeah, like Dorothy, I'm very open. I'm very straightforward, and I don't camouflage the words. But when they being here in the United States and raising girls here, I had to also try to consider the culture, because they go to school like just like in Cameroon when um you would be considered a bad child if you knew the exact words of body parts, especially like our private parts. Here it's like it's jarring too for your child to come to school. I'm talking about vagina, penis. So I started at a young age. I think they were about maybe 3 or 4, when they ask questions, or I started telling them, because I am so anal about, being a mental health practitioner. I have heard so many stories about people being molested when they were kids. And so I started telling kids, having the safety talk about who should touch you or who should not touch you, and the parts where nobody's allowed to touch. And in their school, they also have weeks where they send papers for us to sign to give us permission to talk to our kids about people who are safe. I've forgotten how they call that, but they have a very beautiful name, Christian name that they call it. But I know I was having considering where we are. So we would talk about, we would call the vagina the pink part, but they knew the name vagina. But we at school or in public, they will say, my pink part. They will call it my pink part. And so I thought they'll be like, like
they whisper to you like
yes, they were when you say to them the first time, they're like, oh my god, what's that? Oh my, like the real name, vagina, penis. I was very, very open to them at a very young age. And it's because I have a very, very open relationship with my daughters, very open communication with my daughters. I've been a single mom for like 8 years now, and I can say that my girls are doing amazing because we have a very open communication. I think it's very important for us to have open communication with our children, and to not have barriers, or not squash their questions when they come to you with questions. So I talk to them very openly and very straightforward about sexual health, about as they are growing older, the conversations have become more mature and deeper. But when they were younger, so like Dorothy said, you meet them where they are at their level, and based on their experiences and their comfort level. I had that, because to prepare for this show today, I had, my girls, we always have our family meetings and our Bible study. So yesterday we were all talking about it. And there are, I have a daughter who she's always like, yeah, I want to hear more. And then the others were like, so you meet them at their comfort level, and but the fact that even those who are kind of shy, unfortunately, they just have to be part of the conversation and get comfortable with it. But with time, they've all been comfortable with having that conversation. But I started at a very early age. I never said that. I don't remember what I ever said about mommy, how they came, how they ever came,
how they were born, like
how they were
come
made.
from.
Oh, no. I told them about that in their when they were like 9, 10, when they're like, oh mommy, it seems like he hurts. Oh, I'll never have kids. But I'm always very calm, always very calm when I'm talking to them about anything, but with a straight face, very calm. I don't make it foreign. I don't make it uncomfortable. I talk to them very, in very certain terms where they are not going to be mistaken. And it's very important. Based on my background, I tell them directly, like Dorothy said, who can touch what parts of your body. And it's very important, because I have had a lot of men who were also abused, because like you said earlier, Mabel, in your opening, a lot of us, society had been focusing only on the girls.
Yes.
Forgetting that boys are lacking. Boys, they don't have these conversations. And so, it's very important for us to talk about this topic, and for parents to be comfortable to educate themselves. Those, the parents who were not raised, or who did not have these talks from their parents. As a parent, I always say, as a child, what happened to you as a child is, it's not your fault. But as an adult, you have the responsibility to heal and take care of yourself. So as an adult, it doesn't matter if I was taught, I have to educate myself so that I can educate my children. From the education I have had, listening to people's stories and learning from their experience. A lot of guys were molested when they were kids. A lot of these men walking out here were molested when they were kids, because they were not given this talk.
They didn't know the red, green, and the yellow. Like
they
Dorothy
were
said.
not
They didn't
given
know.
they were not given this talk. And so they did not know what it meant for a girl to touch your private part, or another man to touch your private part. So this conversation is very needed across the board. My girls, we talk about it very, very openly here, and we started when they were about 3, 4, 5.
Very important. I mean, I think when Mercy said in her introduction, I'm going to right now, Mercy, your parents tell you, if some man try touch you now, so you carry belly. I remember one of my friends in Limbe said that when her mother told her that, in walking in the little, bush roads in Limbe, and she saw a man coming, straight, she would go into the bush, because her mom said, if a man touches you now, you're going to get pregnant. I mean, how wrong were we taught about sex? How wrong? And then they expect you to get married and know what to do. And then you get to the point of not being happy in a marriage because you're not satisfied sexually. We'll get into the mental part of that in a minute. But Dr. Mercy, I know you're pumped about mental health and all that. Before I get to that, are you exposing your kids to sex talk already? Does this all relate to what you're doing? Are they more versed?
Yeah, and to go back, I want to say that a mistake that some parents make is feeling like, let me talk to this child and let me not talk to this child. I was that good child. I was that A student. I was that child who loves to read. I was that child who never goes out. Like, you will always know where I am. I don't want to go to 3-and-1. I don't want to go to Fiango Youth Center. I want to be home, reading my novel, helping my parents. I was a good child, an epitome of a good child. So it's not like my mom did not know what to tell me. It's like, oh, a virgin. As if I did not need the education. But when they start looking at your entourage, like, she's hanging out with this person, she's hanging out with this person, she's hanging out with this girl who is too ripe. She has this other friend who is doing this thing. I remember that she actually said, they are friend get boyfriend. Be careful. But I was still that good child who, even when she asked me, you have a boyfriend? Oh, no, 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 no. Even when my sister will ask me, is that I saw you standing with that person? Is that no, 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 no. So I think it felt like that education was not needed for me because I will hear my mom educating other people. And even when she said, and even when she said, if this person touched you, it was that euphemism that she know that you know what I mean.
By touch, yes. They're not explicit.
You know what I mean. Yeah. And I remember even when my older sister suspected that, Messi has some kinds of friends, this girlfriend who is dating this, like she may not be dating, but she has friends who are dating. She'll be like, say if you get sex during this time, your period it come this time, your period not it come this time, so. And it was a topic that I was not really interested in because I was that good child. I'm like, it's not gonna happen. So maybe I did not even sought the knowledge to say, okay, this is a good time, this is not a good time. Why do I want to know when to have sex when I'm not having sex? Or why do I get interested in the conversation anyway? So when we keep saying meeting a child at their comfortable level, I was never comfortable talking about it. And I was not met at that comfortable level because I did not feel like talking about it. And maybe you know the story. That's how some of us got pregnant as teenagers. Even when I had sex the first time I got pregnant. The first time I had sex, not knowing what I'm doing, I got pregnant. So, and I was still that good child. My parents never even knew I was pregnant. I was still that good child.
You were still that good child.
So let us start these things early. Early. I did not plan to start it with my kids as early as I did, but that's because I have very curious and inquisitive children. I had to start because they made me start telling them. And I know that, hey, if I don't tell them, they'll learn it from somewhere else.
Exactly.
Social media will tell them. They all have phones. Even when we monitor our kids' phone, trust me, even when we are watching a movie and you see people kissing and this kid is turning like she doesn't want to see them kissing or he doesn't want to see kids, like, why are you turning your face? What are you thinking about? And I had told my sons a story when, Mommy, how did you carry me? Mommy, you said they cut your stomach when you had me. How did I get into your stomach? I said, oh, when a woman grows up and become mature, God puts a baby into her stomach, and when it's time, that baby comes out. And they believed me. But one day, my last boy was like, Mommy, I know what you did to get pregnant. I know you. I'm like, okay, it's time for those conversations. And he was still young. And one parent is thinking it's time for that conversation. Another parent is like, why are you just telling them? But that's me. These are the closest people to me. They live with me. If you don't know what I know, how do I expect you to, what expectations do I need from you when I cannot teach you? And when I teach them, I'm not saying we. I'm like, pee on the floor. You don't know how to take your penis up when you want to pee. Why is pee on the floor?
That's a boy thing, I tell you.
Said the bad word. No, penis is not a bad word, baby. What is it? It is your penis. Pick it up, hold it up, put it in the toilet and pee.
Pick it up.
I don't need to see, I don't need to see pee on the floor. With those kind of talks, without using euphemisms for those words, you're making them become comfortable. Knowing that they can also come use that word to you without feeling estranged, without feeling like they are bad. Because what happens sometimes is that the way we respond to our children sometimes when they ask something, we leave them ashamed. We're like, oh, who's I hear that talk from? How come you know that word? They feel like they are not supposed to know. And they already know. So next time there's that boundary, they may not even come to you when they have wet dreams or they have certain things. They may not even come to you. My son can just pull his pants down and be like, Mommy, I'm hurting here. And one friend found that funny, like they started having pubic hair and they are just showing you everything. Yeah, I can see it. And I don't have to feel embarrassed. I'll go to the room sometimes and be like, whoop. And I'll call my husband like, this boy is grown. Can you? But if they are not comfortable at home, then they'll go somewhere else and be comfortable. And they may not be getting the appropriate education. Let's remember, we are not just talking sex. We are talking education. And even with our girl child, most of the time we are like, don't carry baby, go carry baby. It is not just about getting pregnant. We have STDs, STIs, all kinds of things that they may not get pregnant, but they may get other things just from that. So it is the education. What are we educating them about? Let's start as early as possible. Yes, we can meet them at their level of where it is age appropriate, but not about being comfortable. A child may not be comfortable talking about it. It doesn't mean they don't want to know. It doesn't mean their curiosity or inquisitiveness is not taking them to other milieux to know. They may not just be comfortable expressing it. Or sometimes, are they not comfortable because we have made them feel like, oh, that word, don't talk about it in this house. Maybe for religious reasons or just the way some of us raise kids. Not being comfortable does not mean that they don't need to know. Okay, find a comfortable, maybe they'll be comfortable reading. Then you give them an education to read. Then maybe you come back and ask them questions. Then from there, you can start building up that space where you can start talking about it. Or when you go to their doctor, they have all these little journals. You can talk to their doctor. Hey, how do I start teaching this child sex education? How do I start teaching them how to even take care of their breasts? How do I start teaching them how to wash down there so that it doesn't smell? Like Dorothy said, some boys, when they get to puberty, you will smell them. That's that time to, even when they shower, you still be like, come, let me smell your armpit. Come, let's sit down and have a conversation. And I do that to my kids.
Love it. Love it.
I smell down there, I smell up there, like, go shower again. And I tell them, I will come bathe you if I smell anything.
Oh yeah, I asked my son, should I come in there?
And they know I will. They know I will. So we have got to that level where it's not that I was not talk to explicitly like that. That's why I'm talking to them. No, it's because I know better now. And if I was not talked to, it's because I was that good child. I presented a good behavior till I gave birth. I was still a good virgin. Like they could not suspect me of anything. But I think children are just so exposed. And when you start talking to them, oh my God, the wealth of knowledge that their little minds have, it may not be accurate, but you'll be surprised. And talking with them, it will even direct the path of your conversation.
I agree.
It will, yeah. When your child tells you, Mommy, you lied. I know how I got into your stomach. They still know his stomach is not womb, but
it's yeah.
I'm like, okay, how did you get in my stomach? You and daddy had sex. If a child can tell me you and daddy had sex and had me, why should I be ashamed of talking to this child about menstruation, puberty, reproduction, and about them just feeling comfortable in their own body? When we don't say it is a penis, wash it clean, shave your pubic hair, this is how you do, put some colognes, put some deodorant, it means that you're maturing. See, your voice is deepening. This is what is going on. If you have sex with a girl, you're going to get them pregnant. It's not if you touch. So they get comfortable in their own bodies. It's not something that they are hiding to go show in a darkness somewhere. It's not something that they hide to go discover somewhere behind a hidden thing, then come home and act like nothing happened. I need my children to be able to say, hey, mommy, I want to have a girlfriend. Then we talk about that. Will I be okay with that? My role will be to educate them, pros and cons, so that good or bad, they can still come back home and say, Mom, this is what is going on. Get them to a comfortable
I like
space.
that. I like that. I want to just acknowledge Mercy talking about, the first time I had sex, I got pregnant because, she got pregnant. I'm a classmate, of course, from Form 1. And that boy is a pilot today. He is married. He is so responsible. He has a master's degree. Now, Mercy is one of those girls who was a good girl per her family. Didn't teach her about sex. She got pregnant. She had the baby. What about our girls who don't keep the children? They get to some abortion clinic, they die.
Can
It
I
is very
just speak to
important.
can I
Go
just
ahead,
speak
Dorothy.
to one fundamental thing that Mercy said? And sex is not bad.
It's not.
We need really, there is nothing bad about sex. If it was that bad, we would not be falling head over heels trying to have sex with, I don't know, whomever. So why I'm saying that is that there is this very rich dichotomy between a good girl and a bad girl. Mercy having sex they made her a bad girl. Sorry.
At that time, it did.
At
that time, the conception was
exactly, but it shouldn't be.
You who is pregnant as a teenager, you're even worse than like a prostitute.
Worse.
Yeah.
And that's the projection that our parents have on us, right? And so I think it is important, just like Bob said, and I'm going back to Bob's story because I think that is the center of our conversation here. I think if he explored his sexuality, exploration, meaning he would start masturbating. He would go online, find a chick. He can get a chick online. He would go to his friend's house and say, let's try. Let me put my thing in here and then see if it comes out the other way.
It may not even be a chick. It may be a guy. They may just be
that's what I'm saying. That's why
without the education, you do anything wrong.
Without the education.
Exactly. So it's important for us to not be devil sex for our kids, because I don't know if you guys know Glennon Doyle. She talks about the shame-based sexuality. And when you turn sex into this taboo topic, that is that horns on your head if you do something on your body, that the parents were like, don't touch your penis like that. You're not supposed to touch your penis, and if he cannot touch his penis, who is supposed to touch it for him? We need to get to a place where our kids do not feel ashamed of their bodies. They do not feel ashamed of their wet dreams, but they have a succinct understanding of what is happening within them so that they can understand it and they're not traumatized, they're not ashamed. Shame, anything born out of shame is, oh God, I cannot even begin to tell you that, most of the implications that we have on earth today are things born out of shame. Shame is a terrifyingly terrible emotion. And we should try to take this shame away from sexuality, from sexual education, from sexual awareness, So there is nothing bad about sex.
Good. Yeah. Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, thank
Bob,
you.
were you going to add something before I go to the next talk about dating?
Yes, exactly. Yes, please. I was gonna say that I was just listening to everybody. It's just a wealth of knowledge and experiences being shared. And I like to think of sexual health education as something that is intersectional. In the direction that it goes across multiple subjects, domains. You're looking at age, You're looking at culture, which actually lays the foundation to what is taught and how is it going to be taught. Dorothy talked about talking to kids at the level that they can understand, meeting them at their level of exposure, meeting them at the level of their experience. That is very, very vital. But then the thing is, if a parent, and I want to acknowledge your audience, Mabel, because it's an international audience. If a parent doesn't have not been exposed to sexual health education, they cannot give what they don't have. They cannot give what they don't know. So I think in order for us to successfully teach children or young people a lot about sexual health education, we need to go back and at the culture and try to see how we can also offer support to these parents. Now, America and the West, you have a lot of parents that are either too busy with trying to make too much money and trying to accomplish their ambitions and things like that. But in other countries and other parts of the world, like Africa, the preoccupation is survival. Your parents are working twice as hard, not because they really want to build a house down the street or buy a land somewhere just yet, but they need to make sure that they have money to put food on the table. They need to make sure that they have money to, satisfy cultural expectations, whether it's going to church Sunday and paying their tithes and offerings and being a part of that church group. But we get preoccupied by all of these things to the point that we fail to provide this necessary support. We become too preoccupied to the point that we fail to even want to learn about something new and different. And I think that contributes to how much sexual education, sexual health education can be taught. I have younger siblings, like I probably mentioned that I don't have children of my own just yet, but I have a lot of young nieces and nephews, cousins. And I also have even, you know how when you go to boarding school, you have bigs.
Yes.
Back in my days in secondary school, I had little younger ones that looked up to me. And I kept advising them, coaching them, and guiding them even till date. I've had younger ones that look up to me where they come up to me and they're like, hey, I have something to tell you. I'm like, I'm all ears. And then they're like, I was having this encounter with so-and-so person, and today they told me they're pregnant and stuff like that. What do I do? She says she wants to do this. And I'm like, listen, to begin with, the decision on whether she has to get an abortion or not is not yours to make.
Right.
That's one of the advices I always tell them. That's not yours to make. You can assert your opinion. You can say what you feel and think about it, but that decision is not yours to make. So let her and her family make that decision, because whatever they deem is best for them, let that be their decision. Now, like meeting people at their level of experience, exposure, it's pivotal, because I made it a point for myself that I didn't get that support. So I was going to make sure that anybody who is younger than me gets that support from me. If they either reached out, or sometimes I actually trigger the conversation. And when I trigger the conversation, I end up they either find me supportive enough, they find themselves comfortable to expose more to me. And I always tell them, I'm not going to criticize you. This is not the goal of this conversation. It's not to make you feel how bad or how horrible, but it's to help you understand, how did you even arrive at certain decisions that you've made? Are you proud of them? Are you okay with it? Is there something you want to do differently? Why would you want to do it differently? And my sister and I, we've approached this issue independently and separately, but we end up discovering that we had similar results, because when we talk to the same relatives, they share with us their experience. For instance, my sister realized that the younger ones are becoming explorative and everything. And you know what she did? She would always load up their wallets with condoms.
Oh, okay.
They don't want to have the conversation. She tries to want to have the conversation with them. They either avoid it or something. So all she did was, when they leave their wallet in the living room or in the room somewhere, She loads it up with condoms. But then they never even realize that they never run out of condoms, no matter how many times they use it. So on her part, she couldn't have
Based
all of
education.
right. So she couldn't
So
have all of
even
those
when they are
conversations.
not comfortable listening to it, education is still happening.
Right. Exactly.
Mhm.
And that's where I'm saying that for me and my sister in our generation, which is consistent with all of us sitting here, we have this exposure. Unlike us, our parents don't. And like Mabel said that the mom directs the sister to come to her to come and extract knowledge that she was never handed over. They didn't hand that knowledge over to you, but somehow you expected. Well, it could also be that your mom is also thinking, well, maybe it's exposed because she's now more educated than I am, or
I
she's
was
been
in university at the time, yeah, so I'm sure.
exactly. So you're more exposed, more educated, more privileged. So you would know a thing more than she would be able to expatiate on that subject. And Dr. Ruth also talked about men being exposed to abuse and things like that. And I want to say that I want to affirm what she's saying from the perspective of a young boy that is growing up. And that ties into Dr. Mercy's assumption of the good girl. When growing up, I also grew up as a good child, a good kid. I was that kid that my mom didn't never have to sleep and worry about Bob. It's like Bob is the last person she could worry about. Other children she'll worry about, and worrying about them is like the complex of a bad child. Now, I may have not been a very expressive child. I may have not been a very inquisitive child. And by that I mean like challenging your parents or challenging being able to assert yourself. Because some of us learn how to speak up really young, and some of our elder brothers or relatives, that was their path to speak up for themselves, to challenge other people. And sometimes they could be rude. Sometimes their ability to speak for themselves is perceived as rude. It doesn't mean it's necessarily rude what they're saying, but just the fact that they're able to articulate or challenge an older person in our culture, it's perceived as being rude.
Exactly.
And so you have that whole thing going on there where they, because of the fact that they've been labeled by bad kids, disobedient ones, and all of that, you have the parents looking at them with a microscope. It's like they want to monitor their every move. They want, because it's like now you go bring Bele for this house. You now you go do this and that, So it's like you have all of that going on, and then you have the good children that are actually the most vulnerable and susceptible to these abuses that no one thinks or suspect that would be the case, and then don't end up giving them the advice that they need, don't end up giving them the support that they don't end up looking out for them. And so I think it's important that in order for us to successfully hit sexual health education in our communities, we need to go back to the roots, the foundation, looking at the culture, trying to see how we can support existing parents. Because like we're talking here, we live in a wealth of knowledge. Now, mind you that there's a ton of people in Africa and other continents that don't necessarily live in those wealth of knowledge, but they have to strive to access the wealth of knowledge.
That's right.
And accessing it can be difficult and challenging to these people. So it becomes, how do they, but yet there is an expectation. You can look at an 18-year-old and you say, how can you not know this and how can you not know that? That's because they have a challenge accessing that wealth of information that you and I are now privileged to live in.
Yeah.
Thank
Great
you.
points. Great points, Bob. I think what I should say is that the culture is different from when we were kids, and now that we are parents, okay? If you are a parent watching, listening, or you're going to watch this later, and we're not blaming you that you didn't teach us. You did not have access to that knowledge. So you did not teach that to us. So we get that. All right. So today we have, like Dorothy
every
said,
parent, let me cut you a little bit,
phones.
maybe. I think as every parent, they want the best for their children.
They do, yeah.
Even not teaching, they did the best with what they had or what was presented at that time. So it's very important that no parent feel blame.
Yeah, no parent should feel blamed. Well, we've talked a lot about how we introduce. Yes, Dorothy, you want to say something before I move on to dating? I saw
I
your
want,
hand.
yes, before I move on to, I like this part about the parents,
Yes.
not being blamed. However, the parents are responsible, and I want that there is a misconception that parents in Africa do not have access. They do. If a parent can watch this show on Facebook, you have access to internet. And if you have access to internet, you can choose what kind of information you can get out of the internet. And I'm just saying this provocatively, to incite a certain level of accountability in our parents. I'm talking about parents like us, because even parents in Western world, I'll tell you that parents in the Western world who do not have sexual health education talks with their kids.
That's very true.
And I'll tell you something. Our kids know 300% more than we do. Every
Absolutely.
kid who plays roadblocks, every child who plays roadblocks, and I'm not kidding, every child who plays roadblocks is exposed to sexual assault.
That's so true.
There are a lot of molesters, pedophiles on roadblocks who would contact your kids and kind of get sexual relationships with your kids. Every child, just so you understand how sexual education is important for us as parents. So we're not blaming parents. There's no handbook for parenthood. We're not, there was no book handed down to either one of us on how to be a parent. We're not talking about perfect parenting. We're talking about progressive parenting. What I'm going to ask parents out there, no matter where you find yourself, do not have the arrogance of knowing, because you don't know you don't know zero about what your kids know these days. Educate yourself. Go online, get information, educate yourself, and educate your kids in that process. So
totally
that will be my plea to every single one of us. Every single one of us. It's about progressive parenting. It's not about perfect parenting. It's about growing with your children, and it's such a beautiful experience.
It is.
It is such a beautiful experience because you learn a lot. I have learned a lot just trying to find the way to talk to my kids, the best time to talk to my kids. I have learned things that my mom wasn't exposed to, that I personally wasn't exposed to, but that I am forced to learn and relearn because I want to learn how to be a good mom to my kids,
Now, let's move on to dating. Now, if we don't expose our kids to all this education about sex, sexual health, safety talk, how do we expect them to get onto the dating world without this knowledge handed over to them? Dorothy, I think your kids are so prepared to date.
See, you would be surprised, but they're not. Like I said, every single kid is different. I'm gonna have the conversations that I want to have with them to help educate them. However, the best educator is an experience. They need to experience things their own way, because I cannot live my children's lives.
That's right.
I can speak from a place of, being didactic and being empathetic as a mother, but it's a lived experience, So what I mean by that is, we have that experience where they say, I don't want to see you with any guy. And then suddenly they're like, where are the children? Why are you not getting married? Why are you not bringing children? How am I supposed to bring children? How am I supposed to evolve from the place where I'm not even supposed to know about sex to a place I'm supposed to get a guy, bring a child home? So, and that's why, if you can recall, right from the get-go, I talked about many talks. You build them up. So you start from that consent, body parts.
So you're not there. You're not at that point of talking about dating yet, or because they're still young.
So I talked to them about dating. Both of my boys have had girlfriends. They have had girlfriends.
What we call play girlfriends.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, my first son had his first girlfriend that was last year, and they broke up, and he came back home, and we had the talk about heartbreak and about agony and pain in love and moving on, and he was fine, you know.
Mhm.
So when I talk to them about dating, for me, the most important part about dating when they go into the dating life is I teach them to, you know, we have this thing of always telling people, um, you know, it is such a terrible thing to date at a certain age. No, I don't tell them it is a terrible thing to date at a certain age. I tell them every age has an experience that is given to you. It must not be a sexual experience.
Mhm.
Dating at 13 must
That's what I
not be
mean.
a
Play, like
sexual
we say in Cameroon,
experience.
play girlfriend. You know, you hang out with them,
Yes,
and
you know, so what are the things that you can gain out of this experience? You can gain a friendship for life.
yeah.
You can gain insight into women's lives that you will not gain from books or from videos. You can gain someone that you can share intimate conversations with that you cannot share with me, nor your daddy, nor your brother. So those are the conversations that I have with I mean, he was back then, he was 13 when he dated, you know, and I urged him to think about the dating experience, not necessarily as a sexual experience.
That's
You
right.
know, so that is what I did. With my 10-year-old, it was like, I was like, okay, when he did it, that was like 3 years ago, and he came on and said, Mama, Zuri and I would decided that we're going to be boyfriends and a girlfriend. I'm like, oh wow, so you have your first girlfriend. Wow. So what do you do with Zuri that you don't do with the next girl, your girlfriend, Shanti? What's the difference? Oh, well, we spend more time together. We hold hands. Oh, that's nice. Now, remember your green, your red, and your yellow parts?
Mm.
Yeah?
Awesome. That's a good segue. It's a good segue.
Remember, you know,
Let's
so
touch mental health and sex health education a little bit. I'm so glad we have Dr. Ruth and Dr. Mercy who can talk about this. We have all agreed somehow that if we don't teach them as parents, you're going to get it from somewhere else. And they all have cell phones today. Roblox is one thing Dorothy mentioned. My daughter had asked me, what is gay? Because somebody said something about her, you know, about gay on Roblox, you know, and the colors, which we all love, it was something in that direction. So yes, if your kids are playing video games, there is some, you know, sex being talked about on those video games. So you have to watch out for that. So kids who do not get this education about sex and they head into the dating field, right? Bob said you cannot give what you don't have. The expectation from the other person is that you're coming to date me, we're going to have this good life together, and I'm expecting things from you that I don't even know if you have. Mentally, how can not being informed about your own body, your own sexuality, and the knowledge of sex, how can that affect your dating? I'll start with Dr. Mercy. Talk about that as far as in the aspect of mental health. Should we be prepared? Would that make me a better partner if I'm more prepared with all this information?
I think we should always be prepared. Like they say, knowledge is key about anything you want to do. You have to prepare for it. You have to plan for it. Like Dr. Ruth says, you will be surprised at how many people we see, I mean, men, married men, who are still living off some trauma from when they were kids. You will be surprised at some men who still tell you about my father abused me, the neighbor abused me, my father's friend abused me. And let's say the parents were not part of the abusers, right? They will be telling you something that happened 30 years ago. They are still traumatized from that. And their parents do not even know that it was happening. This auntie that you're leaving your child with, you're traveling, and let's say they have a boy or they have a girl, they share the room, then kids come back, they don't tell you what happened when you left your child there. Or it may not be their own kid. It may be the auntie or the uncle themselves. who inappropriately touch them, but you trust these people with your children and you keep leaving them there. If there is not that space for communication in your home, then you will be blinded because you will not know what your child is going through. So it opens a lot of communication. It opens a lot of
It
trust
does.
issues.
I watch
When
I watch a Netflix show called Love is Blind, and I don't know if you've watched it. People, they date behind the walls, and then you don't see the person, and then if you connect emotionally, they propose, and if you accept to marry the other person, you meet now in person for real. So these two people connected, but the guy was still stuck in his past because the way he got introduced to sex and relationship was his father taking him to his side chicks while the guy was a little boy. That's how he got to know about, sex. So he said, my dad would take me to his girlfriend's house. And I know what they were doing while I was in the living room. I come back home, my mom never knew for 24 years.
mm-hmm.
And so when he was getting to get married, he was like, I'm not ready because I don't think I can respect my wife because of the way I was introduced to sex and sexuality.
Right. And that's not even all. You have some married women, especially who have never reached orgasm because their introduction into sex was a
Don't get
trauma.
Dorothy started.
Yeah, because their introduction into sex was traumatized.
We had a show earlier, a couple years ago about that, and I think we should do a repeat.
Yeah. So it is all those things. And even you not teaching them about the communication, if they cannot build those relationships with you, they go out there, they struggle to build trusting relationships. I mean, not just sexual relationships, but trusting relationships because they are always feeling like something is lacking. Something is lacking. They don't have the skills for team building even. They don't have the skills to set boundaries because communication is always, they are always halted somewhere to be able to show themselves, express themselves effectively. It's a problem. Not only that, I'll still go to body image. We have some people or some girls feeling like it's wrong to have a breast because when they started having breast, they're like, oh my God, you don't start get bobby. Nah, man, picking they will start looking like it is a wrong thing to have a breast. They are not even comfortable. They start feeling bad about their body.
Their body
is
parts.
developing. They are getting their reproductive organs. Psychologically, we are not promoting them to develop as healthy children or as healthy adolescents. And that transcends even into adulthood. They
Into
keep thinking,
relationships
I don't like this. I don't like this. Because they're trying to hide it. They are not comfortable. This open up to body dissatisfaction. That's why you see sometimes a male or a female will go to a friend to say, oh, Nasia Bobby, they must say Bobby. Look at mine. Then before you know, they start getting some intimacies, the same gender kind of thing, because they have not been able to know that they can be proud of it. So they find same-sex people to say, hey, let me see what is so bad about mine. Let me see your own. Some kind of things start happening. But again, when you are very open in your home and teaching your child what you're supposed to be teaching them, it reduces their anxiety level because when they are out there being curious, when they are playing those video games and all of a sudden, instead of somebody saying, oh, put the roadblock this way, the person instead say, hey, are you in your room alone? Show me your thing. Let me see. Anxiety start developing, inquisitive start developing. Now, they are not only dealing with self-esteem issues or body positivity, lack of positivity issues, but now they are starting to deal with anxiety. Am I supposed to be doing this? This is a game that I love. When do I cut it off when somebody starts talking like this? So you're building their self-confidence. They are able to say no without feeling bad, without even being anxious about it. You're training them to say that, hey, it is my body. I do what I want to do with it. I'm not going to show you before we continue this conversation. I'm not going to show you if I need you to play with me. I'm not going to show you. So it's been a lot. Sex education can reduce even risk of depression to children because it lowers, you're teaching them. It lowers the risk of sexual abuse and exploitation. If they don't know, you will be surprised that a kid can go out there and a teacher call them on the side and say, oh, especially these children that they are 13, they look like they are 18. If they don't know, they don't know. Some parents don't have phones at home. They go to church every day. The kid is not allowed to do this. They go to school and the teacher corners them on the side. Like, you're pretty, you're this. And because they are feeling that this is an authority, they have to succumb to it.
Right.
Take off your dress, take off your underwear. They are doing it. If you had taught them at home, knowing that they own their bodies, you have already saved them from abuse and from exploitation. And not only that, you're teaching them healthy intimacy. I can kiss you, I can hold hands, we can talk about it, but we still have those boundaries. Don't touch my red, don't touch my yellow, don't touch my green. So things like that, it saves them from a lot of unhealthy consequences. And the timing, yes. Teach them. You want to date? You want to do this? Okay, let's sit and talk about some of the consequences that can come with that. Are you physically ready? Are you mentally ready? Are you financially ready? So we talk about all those things to get them more prepared as confident adolescents getting into their adulthood and be the men or the women that we want them to be tomorrow, because we have seen them a lot of risky behaviors. And like I said, it's not because we teach them that they'll model or they'll be the epitome of good behavior, but we teach them so that they know they are able to give consent. And again, if they go out there and fall, they can still come back home and say, I did this. Because you will still be the best teacher at that time when they are down, more than even at the time when they have that confidence.
That's right.
So
One thing I
need to
learned
be
in
there for them.
parenting is that you are your child's first and most important teacher. So I want to wrap this up in the next 15 minutes, but let's talk about sex talk for boys and for girls. Dr. Ruth, you have girls, right? And you've talked about exposing them to this talk at a very young age, and beautifully you've done so. Dorothy has boys. She's doing the same thing. Dr. Mercy has a boy. She's doing the same thing. I have boy and a girl, and I think my boy is more exposed than my girl. And because my girl's 8, the boy is 13. As for Bob, no biological kids, but you do talk to people who look up to you about this. So do we all agree, therefore, that we should not distinguish the way we talk about intimacy, sex, dating to boys and to girls? It is the same thing. I love the rule of the green, red, and the yellow. So do we all agree here now that whoever is watching, listening, you should talk about this education to your children, despite or no matter the agenda? It's the same talk, the birds, the bees, however it is. I just want a shake of the head or a nod that's something that we should all do. Talk about it. Perfect. Okay. 3 points, Dorothy. Excellent. To wrap this up, some parents consider that it is vulgar to talk about sex to their children, which I believe it is not. But let's touch the single parenthood. Ruth, when you talk about sex to your children and when they see their father, does that talk happen at the same time as well, or it doesn't happen on the other side?
Great question. Before I go to that, I want to, when I'm talking to my kids we talk about dating all the time because, as teenagers, they all have feelings for people. They have crushes, right? This person likes me, or this person, or I like this person. So the way we are, we talk openly because I'm a single person too. And so they're always like, I think this person will be good for mommy. I think this person, and I'll be like, I like men like this, so we have that open communication. So it's very easy to have these talks. But when I'm having these conversations with my kids about dating, I always teach them about relationships, healthy and unhealthy relationships. I teach them about their expectations. Okay, so first of all, I've taught my kids about their values, who they are. Because if you get in a relationship when you don't know your values, then if you don't have anything you stand for, you're going to fall for anything, right? So I teach them about their values. Who are you? We are a Christ-based, family. We are very, we believe in God, and our identity is in Christ. And so I want to teach them to date in a Christian way. And so because I have had a lot of experiences, that I've learned from, and so I'm making sure that my kids learn the right things that I did not know. So I teach them, before you get in a relationship, you have to have expectations. What are your expectations in this relationship? What are your values? You know, what is important to you when you're getting in a relationship? You know, what are your morals? What are your standards? You know, what are the things that you can talk about in a relationship? What are you expecting from this person? And those expectations have to be realistic, you know, because I cannot be expecting you to do something that you cannot, or you cannot be expecting me to do something that you cannot. So these are things that I have my daughters, and we talk about it. What are your values, or what are your expectations? What are your morals? What are our morals? You know, and then we talk about our culture to being, you know, I'm raising them in America, but this is an African home. And so we talk about our African values, and so we you know, compare and contrast, you know, our values and the ones of, you know, the Western world. And so there are things that we adopt, but we make sure that our core values and our culture is respected. And so when I talk about my kids about dating, I also talk about, you know, healthy and unhealthy relationships, because we have a lot of people who do not know what a healthy relationship is and what an unhealthy relationship is. You know, a healthy relationship, there's open communication, there's respect, there's kindness, there's love. You know, you're able to talk to each other. You have, you know, you have healthy boundaries. You know, you're protecting your emotions. You're you know, somebody who shares your same morals is very important, because I deal with clients all the time who got in relationships because they wanted to please that person. And then we talk about the unhealthy, you know, unhealthy relationships. If you are with somebody where you cannot express yourself, that is a red flag. If you are in a relationship where you're going to be walking on eggshells, that is unhealthy. If you're in a relationship where somebody is controlling you, they want you to wear your hair in a certain way, they want you to change, they don't want you to talk to people, they want to isolate you, those are all red flags. If you are in a relationship with somebody who is belittling you, who invalidates you, who invalidates your feelings, who gaslights you, that is a huge red flag. So I teach my kids to be able to know these red flags so that they can be able to position themselves in a, you know, in a relationship. Because a lot of us have gotten into relationships where we're unhealthy, but we did not know it. We did not know the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationship. You know, in Africa, they'll curse you, they'll call you name, or they'll, you know, or beat you. And, you know, if there's abuse,
stay, at least you get man.
At least you get man. Either verbal,
emotional
abuse is very, you know, emotional abuse. There is spiritual abuse. You know, there is economical abuse. There's all kinds of abuse. Yeah, there's all intellectual abuse. There's all kinds of abuses that people experience, but without knowing that this is, they don't have language for it because they were not taught. So I teach my kids, before you get in a relationship, you need to know all these red flags, so that when it comes time, so when people start expressing these things, or when people start manifesting these red flags, you know what to do. You have to set healthy boundaries. For us to have healthy relationships, you have to have, first and foremost, you have to have boundaries. But for you to have those boundaries, you need to know what your values are. You need to know what your morals are, what your standards are, what is acceptable in your culture, what is comfortable for you.
Right.
So those are the things I make, the groundwork I do with my daughters. If you call them here, and they're going to just name them to you. You know, those are the groundwork I do with my daughters, preparing them for dating. And so we don't have a rule of, oh, you cannot talk to boys, or you cannot oh, they like people. Unfortunately, and this might be a topic for next time. Unfortunately, maybe this is very important because we are here in the United States, and a lot of us go to school. A lot of our kids go to school with, you know, like my kids go to private school where it's predominantly white kids. And so when it comes to dating, it's a whole ball game, because some of the kids who love the black kids, but their parents would tell them, don't date her. Yeah.
Race.
So that might be a topic. Yeah. And that also plays on their mental health, because it makes you start wondering how beautiful you are. You know, the darker skinned girls don't really get, you know, people talking to them. The lighter skinned girls, you know, get a lot of, people talking to
Attraction
them,
from
and
boys, yeah.
attraction from boys. So these are all the conversations that we have. But I tell my girls, if they are not your preference, don't make yourself their preference.
That's right.
You know, if you're not, if you like them, but their parents
Don't accept
tell
you.
them don't
Yeah.
accept you. I said that is, you have to learn now. You have to learn now to differentiate, to be able to acknowledge those things. That's reality. And so make your decisions and set your boundaries based on that. Because we all know that when you get into a family, yes, you're marrying this man, but you're also marrying the whole family.
Yeah.
You know, if you're so I teach them these things, you know, before they get, you know, to an age where, preparing them to an age where they have, where they're gonna get married, so they're all well-rounded and feel comfortable, know what they're getting into, know what their expectations are, know what they can accept and what they cannot accept. You know, but also teaching them to be graceful, to be compassionate, to be empathetic, to also be patient, because we are all different. You know, and the fact that somebody has one red flag, I say it has to be a pattern. If it's a patterned behavior, then that calls for you to make certain decisions. But if somebody makes a mistake one time, you have to have an open an honest conversation about it, and then see if you want to stay in that relationship or not. So briefly, that's how I've been handling dating with my daughter.
You're really hands-on.
I
love that a lot. Bob has his hand up.
Thank you. I have a question here for Dr. Dorothy, following the wealth of knowledge she just shared with us.
I'm not a doctor, though.
Dorothy is not a doctor. Don't make her make
No, sorry, I meant to say, sorry. I didn't mean to say, it's just a slip of tongue.
Not me.
Yes, I was going to Dr. Ruth. Yes, because she just finished talking. And Dr. Ruth, I wanted to ask you that, how do you as a parent respond to a kid whose morals or religious teachings that you've provided them, or let me back it up, whose moral values do not align with yours? Because it ties in with the component of mental health that Dr. Mercy was expatiating on a few minutes ago. How do you respond to that child? As a child that you raised, you supported, you've guided, but their moral values or their religious values do not align with what you taught them or what you stand for personally. How do you respond to them and yet still offering a safe space such that they don't feel intimidated, or they don't feel safe enough to share with you something that is threatening to their being? How do you respond to that?
Ruth, you need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. That is an amazing question, because we have a lot of parents. You know, I do a lot of things at my church, and you know, women's groups, both groups. There are so many parents who are so sad now, because the way they raise their kids, the values that they raise their kids in church. I'm Catholic, in the Catholic church, but their kids are all now experimenting and exploring, going to all different churches, and this really breaks their heart. And I tell parents, even my kids, and this is what I tell myself to keep my sanity, my own mental health. I'm doing the best I can right now to raise you in my values and in the ways that in my culture. But if you grow up and you want to explore, that is, that you're fine to do that. And I always tell parents, you have done your best. You have done your best. All you have to do is pray that your child does their exploration. They are free, because we cannot hold them in the nest forever. They are free. They do their exploration. You pray that hopefully they come back. But in case they don't come back, as long as they have something that they believe in, something that is higher than them, a higher power, you know, as long as they have a level of spirituality, something that grounds them, that makes them know right from wrong and function as kind human beings. Because I think that we cannot put things, you know, we box everybody, you know, religion, you know, I don't do religion, I do spirituality, you know, because and spirituality you practice it in you know, in different, as long as you know that there is something that is greater than you is important. And if I raise my kids, I was the proudest parent recently when my daughter got the overall award for kindness, all these good things, leadership and stuff. That award meant more to me than any other award. Why? Because if I know that if she grows, that's what I'm teaching them. Character. I'm teaching my kids character.
Yes.
Character first. When you grow up, who are you? Who are you? How do you affect people when people meet you, when people encounter you? That's what is important to me more than even this religion, or I be Catholic, I be Presbyterian, I be Baptist, I be this.
It divides
how when people encounter you, maybe when people encounter you, how do they feel? What is their experience when they leave? That's what matters to me most, because we have a lot of people in churches, we have a lot of devilish and demonic things happening in churches, you know. So
Right.
I teach my kids, and if my kids are Catholic right now, if they grow up and they decide to
derail from your morals, you're good with that, as long as
no, not morals, not morals.
moral.
If they choose to go to non-denominational churches or whatever, that's fine, as long as their morals and their values are still the
intact.
same, as long as they are kind human beings, as long as they serve, as long as they make they make the world better. That's all that matters to me. That's
interesting.
I think the fundamentals here, and Bob, even to take it away from the church and spirituality, you're teaching your children, the people who are teaching their children, you know, sexual orientation, they're teaching their children, you know, a lot of different things, you know, body awareness, you know. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of no, seriously, there's a lot of influence that our children are facing that that's why I always say that it's so important for us as parents to really educate ourselves, because we cannot leave our children's lived experiences. So really have the fundamental thing in every child is, please, we need to bring up children to be good humans.
Absolutely.
We need to bring up good humans. You know, it's on to us to help our children, give them those guardrails on how to be good humans, you know. And it doesn't matter what your denomination is. If you depart from the homely ways that you were brought up in, as long as you're a good human, you know, that is for me fundamental, you know. So yeah.
I'll give it on to Dr. Mercy. She has a hand up, but I always say, Mercy and I are in the same high school chat group. There's people who post so many stuff about religion. I always say, mine is kindness. That's my religion. I always post it. I'm like, mine is kindness. So please stop telling me you have to be Catholic or apostolic or something to be that good person. Yes, Mercy.
To just add into what Bob was asking, Bob, I may not be the same religion with you or what affiliation. We may not even see eye to eye, but some principles in education does not change. It stays universal. And even when, as a mental health provider, I am not saying listen to me. I am not saying do what I'm telling you. I am saying understand this so that you can make better decisions, so that whatever you came in for, I am not escalating it, I am de-escalating it, so that you can be a healthier person. For example, I am not saying if you want to have sex, if your morals or your beliefs, you have to have sex at a certain time. I'm not saying don't do it. I am saying these are the consequences. These are some of the choices. So I may not even see eye to eye with you, but there's something called cultural sensitive care. I am working with your emotions. I am working with your social life. I am working with you as
that.
a person, giving you that holistic care. But at the end of the day, you have to make the decision. You don't have to see with me my beliefs. You have your morals, I have mine. But that teaching, the fundamental thing is there. These are the consequences that will happen. These are the pros, these are the cons. So can we talk about your choices? Can we see what those choices will lead you to? Can we see what you've been doing in the past and how you get to this point? Can we see if we can do some other coping skills? Can we see if we can do things this way? Or if this is the only way you know how to do it, let's see why that is the only way for you. Let's see why how we can incorporate another thing without changing your morals, without telling you, follow me to this denomination, without saying, oh, you have to train your kids the way I train my own to attain this result. No. Let's see how we can make better choices. It is a treatment plan that if I need you to be compliant, you will have to be part of that treatment plan. You will have to have a say in it. It is a shared decision making. Don't do what I do, but let's see how we can get to better choices, better behaviors, and I can also learn from you. So
Yes.
cultural sensitive care is what we do. We don't have to have the same beliefs, but we have to have the teaching is the same. Let's see how we can grow and explore from that teaching.
And
Awesome.
learn from each other.
We do learn from each other.
Please, parents out there, we need to depart from our arrogant ways of knowing it all. We don't know it all. Let's learn from our children, for our children. Let's have that open conversation, open dialogue with our children so we can learn from them so that we can be able to impact them respectfully.
I love that. Dorothy, I've learned so much from you as a parent, honestly, even back when we were roommates and colleagues. I know Bob has his hand up. We're going to go to you in a second, but remember that I asked you all to bring an African proverb today. That's going to be the last thing we talk about before.
I need to Google.
Right after. You need to Google? Did you say you need to Google?
I don't remember that.
I remember.
Yes, your assignment was to bring an African proverb. You can say your proverb in any language, and then you try to explain.
Tell me that.
Let me say something.
Yes, go ahead.
Dorothy keeps emphasizing that parents should come down from their high horses about knowing everything. It's very important. The way I parent my kids, I'm always telling them I'm sorry when I know that I've been wrong. I'm always telling my kids. I model that for my kids. And my oldest daughter told me one day, she came to me, she said, I think she had a disagreement with her sister, and then she went to her sister's room and apologized. And then she came here to the living room and she said, Mommy, thank you for teaching us how to say sorry. Because it's easy for me to go say sorry to my sister when I know that I have done something wrong.
Oh, yes.
I think that's one of the things that African parents don't do. Older people think it's a taboo to apologize to the younger
person.
I apologize
all the time.
All the time. And if they ask me a question I don't know, I'm like, I don't know. Because my daughter had asked me, Mommy, so we have this thing where it's open. They ask Mommy any question. When was the first time you had sex? How many boyfriends did you have? And stuff like that. And then my middle one asked me, she said, what if I kiss somebody? Since the Bible says that, we should be celibate till we are married. What if I kiss somebody if I'm dating? I'm like, okay, hold on. And I'm praying in my spirit. I'm like, Holy Spirit, tell me what to tell this child. Yes, because I never claim like I know everything and they know it. I said, honey, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that right now, but let me pray for the Holy Spirit. By the time we were done with the ride, I said, I said, this is what just came to my spirit. I said, when you're kissing somebody, it arouses certain emotions in your body. And so if you are going to be celibate, celibate, you have to understand that if you're going to kiss somebody, it's going to arouse certain emotions in your body, and you might end up having sex. But you have to know, if you're going to do that, Are you disciplined? Are you at the place where those emotions can be aroused, and then you stop at just kissing? Does that make sense? So these are the conversations I have with them very openly. If I don't know something, I tell them I don't know. A lot of the times, this is what I wanted to say too. A lot of the time, with my kids, we have had a lot of sex talks by reading the Bible, the Old Testament. Old Testament for me na soap opera.
King
There are so
Solomon.
many stories in there. You're reading this, Mommy, what is ejaculation? What does it mean that he ejaculated on the ground? And that's how we've been having a lot of the sex conversations, by reading our Bible. Because people will be like, huh? Reading your Bible? And you talk about, yes, if you're reading the Old Testament, you're going to find out a lot of things. And then somebody had just mentioned about the in our world today, our kids, I think our kids are flooded with this plethora of all kinds of levels of sexuality.
Yes.
What I did a few years ago, I think that was in 2014, when I was working with university students, and a lot of them were very confused about their sexuality. And I prayed, I said, God, please give me the language to be able to teach this to my kids, so that first of all, as a Christian, you're not supposed to, hate people. You're not supposed to discard people. We are called to love people. And so I finally one day, I had the language to tell my kids. I said, we as Christians, if you claim you're a Christian, you're going to love everybody. We will not like what they are doing, their action, just like we don't like people stealing. We don't like, prostitution is a sin, stealing is a sin, and all this murder is a sin. But we don't discard those people, but we pray for them, so that they will come to the realization that this is a sin according to our faith. This is a sin. And so you don't judge people. We love and respect. We love and respect everybody. We love and respect every human being. What they are doing, your faith might not agree with it, but first of all, you still have to treat them with the love and dignity and respect that your Bible, so-called your Bible requires
you.
of, yeah. So I always ask for, I always ask for the Holy Spirit to give me language as a single mother, so that I can raise these kids with the best of my ability. They are not even mine, they are his. I have no name to defend. It's his name. If the kids go wayward, it's his kid. So that's how
the God na palava.
Yeah, so that's how I tackle some of these some of these issues. And I bet you guys, being honest, being straightforward, not claiming like you know all, it's is the way that has really helped me to raise my girls to be the young admirable ladies that they are today.
I really admire you and Dorothy, being in single parent households and raising the children in such beautiful way. And I did learn that in a two-parent household, it's beneficial to have both parents involved in discussing sexuality with their children. But you guys are doing it single-handedly, and it's so successful already. I've held you guys for so long. Bob, you have your hand up. Let's go to you before we go to our African proverbs for the day.
Thank you. So I was just making some notes so I don't lose train of my thought, because a lot of good stuff being shared.
A lot of good stuff, yes.
So Dorothy did touch on some good points that when I said she should preach on, because I was gonna kind of dive into that a little bit. It's difficult in today's world to talk about sexual health education without talking about sexual orientation. Because then you definitely run into it. But I'm trying to not redirect, but highlight the fact that a lot of our audience here today, like we already recognize that it's an international audience. To those in the West, it's relatable. To those from other parts of the world, Africa also, it might be strange to them. So can we talk about sexual education without talking sexual orientation? That was one of my questions. How does this align or contradicts a parent's morals? In the same light, because it plays into that mental health again. How would the parent respond? How would the kid perceive this response from the parent? How can your response offer support or not be ostracizing to your kid, or without you feeling wrong by either affirming or denying your findings if it contradicts your religious or moral standings? The concept of someone's orientation not aligning with your faith described as sin, yet the same description and stigmatization is not associated to premarital sex or someone who is a rapist. How do you enlighten, educate a child that is growing and you've made these findings? How do you put this into boxes that it makes sense and is relatable to them without that shame that takes a toll on their mental health, about a safe space of what to share or not share with a parent?
Dorothy, you got that?
Yes. So I'll say this. This is really a tough one. It's always going to be a tough one because of the way we were brought up and because of our conditioning. I'll say that our social, moral, emotional conditioning, where we were brought up to think that there is one single sexual orientation. It's man, woman, woman, man, right? And so with the social world in which we live in being fraught with different types of sexual orientations and different types of sexual educations, identification, it's become even more important for us to have an open dialogue with our kids. Why? Because right from the onset, you can create a safe space, Bob, like you mentioned, where the kids in doubt can come back to you and talk to you, and educate yourself and create a relationship of acceptance. And that's why I keep on saying that parents, please educate yourself. Please learn from your children, because if my kid comes to me and talks to me about a sexual orientation that is totally the opposite of what I know, guess what? I will have an honest conversation with my kids. I will make sure that I am in a place of acceptance, right? And I will make sure that I have continuous conversations with my kid to understand how this is happening, where this is happening, why at all this is happening. I want to stress on this. I know that people will be flailing around and, oh God, you go, as I say, I'm picking up payday, you accept. Yes, I will, because it doesn't change the kid fundamentally from what the kid is. If you have a morally grounded child, if you have a child whose guardrails, emotional and moral guardrails are stoic and strong, you will not reject the child, and instead you will accept the child and hope that you will be able to understand what this child is going through. I've seen people, especially on this, and I keep on talking about roadblocks because I've had kids in my child's schools who were confronted with sexual content from same-sex men, men who reach out to them on roadblocks and say, hey, do you know that, this is what we do man to man, and it's a man thing. And because that child has not had any sexual orientation, any inkling about sex, just like Mercy said, guess what? That child became very confused and started self-harming. The child started hurting themselves because the child was like, okay, when I talk to my friends about this, and the child talked to friends in school about it, and they were like, oh no, it means that you're gay and gay is bad, And this child started cutting himself and went to the extent of even taking an overdose. Well, so why I'm trying to say this is because even more than ever, the urgency, the importance of having this healthy sexual education talks with our children is so high right now, right at this moment.
Yeah.
Because right now you have the possibility of educating the children, of inculcating healthy sexual manners to the kids and helping them to have a healthy relationship with themselves, right? And and I want to believe that you hear me rambling, and it's because it's a tough question. I want to believe that, you know, the sexual orientation of a child doesn't change a child.
No.
It doesn't change the child.
Mm-mm.
I want to believe that we're bringing up our children to be individuals, to not be a shadow of ourselves. And in this empowerment journey that we're giving to our kids, that we're giving our kids the right to be able to make decisions for themselves, which will not harm themselves, you know, we run the risk of the kids doing something which is totally the opposite of what we are.
Yeah.
It is a risk worth taking. It is a risk worth taking because I'd rather have a gay child than a dead child.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Thank you,
I mean,
Dorothy.
that's just
well
my,
said.
I'm rambling, but that's my take. And I
You're
want,
hitting it on the nail.
with all due respect, I know that this is quite individual.
This is very individualistic.
Very, very subjective topic.
Extremely subjective.
Yes, totally subjective. But I would love for us as parents to start a healthy conversation about children, about their bodies, about their sexual orientation with their children. If you haven't done so, please Google. Google is your friend. The help kids online, you know, on how to have a conversation with your child. And no, if you research on why parents are not talking to their kids about sex, about sexual education, you know, one of the things is that you will find, Mercy mentioned some is trauma. Some of the parents have had their own traumatic sexual experiences. The second one is embarrassment and shame. And then the third one is anxiety. Parents do not know where to start, you know. So please Google, find help kids, talk to your pastor, talk to Sister Ruth in church. You know, if you have a Sister Ruth in church, talk to people like Bob who are open to this conversation, who can kickstart this conversation, help you how to kickstart this conversation, and just have the conversation.
Just have it.
Just talk.
Yeah.
Just have it.
I would rather my kids do something knowing what they are doing than doing something blindly. And as parents, I will love my kid no matter who you are, what you are. You are my kid. That's all that matters. So I will teach you what I can. I will educate you what I can, so that what you're doing, you have a knowledge or a preconceived knowledge of doing what you want to do than doing it blindly without knowing the consequences.
That's right.
I need you to be ready to know that I am doing this. This is what may come back to me, and I am ready for it. So whatever letter we want to attribute to that child, remember that is your child that you birth. Whether it's A, B, C, L, G, B, T, Q,
or a bad child.
That is your child.
The bad child because they know a lot.
Or a good child. That is your child. That child should first know that my mom, my dad love me no matter what. before anything else.
Before
And that is
anything
true.
else.
We love them no matter what. I know you want to go to African proverb, Mabel. So let me kickstart that.
Well, please,
right.
before we transition, Mabel,
Bob.
one
Yes,
last
yes,
question.
Bob. Yes, Bob.
Yes, so to Dr. Mercy, I would like you to just talk a little bit about this point because, again, our audience, I like to ask these questions because it's an informational session.
That's right.
So we're dealing with people where somebody might look at this panel and say, the concept of accepting and any other orientation is foreign. What do you have to say to a parent in Africa right now who is listening to us right now and is thinking this concept is foreign and it's not an African culture thing? And so some even go to the extent of saying that is the emasculation of the male. So what do you have to say about that to them? How does that connect with mental health to the
Bob,
child?
Bob, you are creating another topic here right now,
This is
which we
another
are
You're
going
taking
to
us
talk
to another
about.
direction that
No,
I
because
You are
love.
creating a
sexual health
completely different.
education, right?
Totally,
Because
yes.
again, when you talk this
I
thing,
sent
you will
something
run
to
into it.
Mabel to give you.
So Dr. Mercy has a podcast and she had talked about sexual orientation. And
Okay.
respectfully, Bob, I'll send that to you. But again, I'm going to plan a talk on sexual
Sure.
orientation from the African perspective. That is the whole topic. Don't get Dr. Mercy started, sorry.
Any
because
last
she will
word
not.
on that for the audience right now? Because the question has been asked.
I think in every sense of the word, we need to be open-minded.
We have to be open-minded.
We have to be open-minded. Listen,
I want to say, let us be curious without being judgmental.
exactly.
And the fact that you're not
Bingo.
doing what I want you to do doesn't stop you from being my child.
That's right.
The fact that we talk about some people being gay, but we think that stealing is good or adultery is good or other, we are condemning certain things without even understanding it. So
We're
at
being
what point
hypocrites.
we say this is good and this is bad? I will say my child is
It's my child.
Sun, rain, come anything, I am rooting for you. You are my child.
Yes.
I'm going to work with Bob. I'm going to
Yeah.
work with Bob and plan a talk on sexual orientation, the
Oh,
African
Bob, you
perspective.
started.
So
Yeah.
thank you, Bob.
I am a teenage mother. Let me say this, Bob. I am a teenage mother. No mother wants that for their children. I did not stop being my mother's child. Never. Never.
And I think parents should,
Instead, that is when I saw how much love she had for me.
for you.
She
Yes.
supported me with when you hear Mama Bear, that was when she took it up and be like, oh my God. That's when you know that your parent is your parent. My child is my child. Come what that's my child.
And we shouldn't forget what our children's first loves.
Love, yeah. And
Yeah.
and one of the things that, to sum that up, one of the things that is very important, even to us as adults, that us as parents have to do for our kids, we have to verbally let them know that they are loved no matter what. We have to
tell them, I love you, boy.
Do not judge them. And we also have to make them understand that we are there for them no matter what. So support is very important no matter what circumstance you're facing. When you have support, when you know that, it goes a long way.
I love you even when we don't agree. I still love you.
Yes.
We will come back and
we
talk about sexual orientation.
We need to also remind our kids, Bob.
I have to run. Let me do my African proverb and
okay, do your African proverb. I'll just do one thing. We need to remind our kids that mom, dad is home. You can go and you will always find your way back home.
Yeah, I tell my kids that all the time.
So
and let us make home that safe place. Like I was telling Maybe the other day that home is not where I was born. Home is not this. Home is where you feel comfortable. Home is where you're not running away from. That is home. It may be wherever it is, that is your home. So my African proverb, they used to say, Flyway no yeah road. It go follow diamond for grave.
Hey, you don't teach my own.
Yep.
Ah!
Like even like all these discussions we are discussing now. Mercy, you didn't listen to your mother, you got pregnant. Flyway not here road. It go follow diamond for
And
grave.
for coffin. For
For
good.
coffin. That's my African problem.
I love
Thank
that
you.
one.
Yeah.
All right, who wants to go next?
Well, I had two. It looks like Dr. Mercy's is already close to mine.
Why
One
did
of
she
them
say
was going
people's
to be,
proverbs?
well, one of them was going to
So
be
they
far away,
Googled it.
Goyembam.
Okay,
Yes.
say it
Why?
again.
That was actually mine.
Okay,
And
so
then the other one was going
my
to be,
the
yeah,
other
then the
one.
other one was going to be that uh what a father or a parent sees while sitting down, a child can't see even when they climb an
Yeah.
Iroko tree.
Oh, I love that
Yes.
one.
Which
Yes.
Yeah, we've heard that one in
which
this
we actually debunked. That is a myth that we just debunked.
debunked.
How did you don't debunk African proverbs? They are not
I
even meant to be corrected. Dr. Ruth.
I think I think there is a theory to that being debunked in the sense that if that parent does not have exposure, then they
Yeah.
cannot know as much.
Yes.
But let's just in Africa, age is wisdom. So let's leave it at that. We
Yeah.
cannot debunk
Yes.
African
I
proverbs.
know. Yeah.
We cannot even debunk African proverbs.
Yeah,
No.
mine is only a fool tests the depth of the water with both feet.
Exactly. Love it.
Wow.
Dara.
Okay. Mine is if love is a sickness, patience is the remedy.
Ooh.
Yes.
So much
Okay.
sense in that one.
And it's a Cameroonian proverb. I just found it online.
Wow. Yes.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. See, this could go for hours. And
It could
again,
go
I think we shall
forever.
come back and talk about sexual orientation. This from talking about sex to your children to talking about dating and marriage. In between, there is that sexual orientation. A lot of people are depressed today because they're in marriages where they were not ready. They didn't hear about sex talk. They don't know what to expect. You get to marry, you get into marriage as a virgin. You didn't hear about the talk. What do you do on your wedding night? People always ask. How do you even start? How do you satisfy the man or yourself? Orgasm, like Mercy or Dorothy said, all those things encompass sex education. It's very important because we should not, Dorothy has made it very clear, we should not make it a bad thing when it comes to sex. There is some satisfaction in it.
I tell my kids it's very good. Sex is very pleasurable.
You have to be ready. So
Right
you have to be ready, talk to your children, use the red, green, and yellow light, like Dorothy said, and get them mentally ready. If, again, your kids don't hear about sex from you, they will hear about it from somewhere else, and it might not be the best. Thank you so much for being part of this discussion today. Thank you especially to Bob for birthing this topic, and to all my sisters who don't hesitate to join me on this panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us. It was a
Happy
pleasure.
birthday.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for having us, Mabel, and thank
Bob.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.